The moment Vanessa Sinclair stepped into the Lancaster Grand Hotel, she felt it, that subtle shift in energy, the almost imperceptible pause in the concierge's practiced smile. It wasn't new to her. A black woman in luxury spaces often had to prove she belonged before she even spoke a word. But tonight, Vanessa wasn't in the mood for games. She had a reservation, an executive suite booked well in advance, and a high-stakes legal meeting that could decide the fate of this very hotel. As she approached the front desk, she watched the concierge, a man with slicked-back blonde hair and a name tag that read Daniel, greet other guests with effortless warmth. A professional charm that vanished the moment his eyes landed on her. His voice was polite, but the hesitation in his gaze betrayed him. "Are you sure?" he asked, his lips curling ever so slightly. The words were light, but the weight behind them was unmistakable. Vanessa recognized the game, subtle, insidious, designed to make her second-guess herself. What Daniel didn't know was that this time, he had picked the wrong woman to dismiss. And by the time he realized who she really was, it would be far too late. The air inside the Lancaster Grand Hotel carried the scent of polished wood and expensive cologne, a silent whisper of exclusivity. Vanessa stepped inside with the effortless poise of someone who had long since learned how to command a room without needing to say a word. But she had also learned something else. Sometimes, no matter how you carried yourself, some people still tried to remind you of the doors they believed were never meant for you. She was here for business, not luxury. A case that, if successful, would shake this very hotel from its foundations. But before she could do that, she had to check in. As she approached the front desk, she observed the concierge at work. His name tag read Daniel. His posture was straight, his voice smooth as he greeted each guest with a carefully curated warmth. He exuded confidence, the kind of arrogance that came from knowing he controlled the first impression of the hotel. When it was her turn, she set her ID and reservation confirmation on the counter. She expected efficiency. Instead, Daniel barely looked at her, his expression shifting so subtly that someone less experienced in these moments might have missed it. Vanessa didn't. She saw the flicker of hesitation, the slight narrowing of his eyes, the almost imperceptible smirk that spoke volumes. "Good evening, ma'am," he said, but his tone lacked the warmth he had offered to the guests before her. "How can I assist you?" She kept her voice even. "I have a reservation under Vanessa Sinclair. Executive suite." Daniel didn't reach for her ID. Instead, he leaned slightly, his lips quirking. "Are you sure?" 2 words. That was all it took. He wanted her to question herself, to waver for even a moment. It was a subtle tactic, one she had seen before, a challenge hidden behind politeness. Vanessa's fingers twitched against the marble countertop, but she refused to let irritation seep into her expression. "I'm certain," she said, her voice steady as steel. Daniel sighed through his nose and finally, typed her name into the system. His fingers moved lazily across the keyboard, as if searching for an excuse to turn her away. Seconds passed. Then he leaned back, a self-satisfied smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I'm not seeing anything under that name," he said, tilting his head. "Are you sure you booked with us?" Vanessa felt the burn of something sharp and familiar in her chest. Not surprise, not even frustration, just exhaustion. She had known from the moment she stepped up to the counter that this would happen. She reached into her bag, pulling out her phone. "I have the confirmation email. Would you like me to forward it to you?" His smile tightened. "That won't be necessary." For a brief second, she considered letting it go. It wasn't the first time something like this had happened, and it wouldn't be the last. But then she saw it. The way his gaze flickered to the screen, his lips parting slightly before snapping shut. He had found her reservation, and he hadn't expected to. There was a pause, one that stretched just long enough to betray him. His fingers twitched as if debating his next move. And then, instead of apologizing, instead of admitting his mistake, he exhaled sharply and reached for a key card. "Here you go, ma'am," he said, his voice forced. She took the card, but as she glanced down, her stomach clenched. Room 104. Not the executive suite. Her gaze lifted back to his, steady and unyielding. This isn't the room I booked. Daniel's smile didn't falter, but his grip on the counter tightened. There was a last-minute maintenance issue with your suite, he said smoothly. This is the best we can offer tonight. She had called earlier that day to confirm her booking. There had been no issues. Vanessa leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice just enough to make him uneasy. Interesting, she murmured. Because when I spoke to your staff this morning, there were no reported maintenance problems. His jaw clenched. She waited. Finally, he broke, clearing his throat and turning stiffly toward the back office. One moment, ma'am. And just like that, the game had changed. The man who emerged minutes later was older, sharp-eyed, and dressed in a suit that screamed authority. Michael Sterling, the hotel's general manager. Miss Sinclair, is there a problem? He asked, his voice calm, but with an edge of urgency. Apparently, my reservation disappeared, she said, holding up the incorrect key card. Until it was found. But then my suite suddenly became unavailable. Michael's expression hardened. He turned to Daniel, who was now visibly sweating. Is that so? Daniel swallowed. There was a mix-up, sir. Michael's fingers moved over the keyboard, eyes scanning the screen. Within seconds, his jaw locked. It appears, he said slowly, that your suite is very much available, Miss Sinclair. Silence. Daniel stood frozen, his skin paling as reality settled in. He had lost control of the situation. Michael handed Vanessa the correct key. I deeply apologize. Your penthouse suite is ready. Dinner and a bottle of wine will be sent up on the house. She accepted the card, her eyes never leaving Daniel's. He couldn't even look at her. She had won the first round. But the next morning, Daniel would realize just how badly he had lost. By the time Vanessa stepped into the hotel restaurant for her breakfast meeting, the tension had already settled in. Daniel was behind the concierge desk, his posture rigid. He saw her before she saw him. But the moment that sealed his fate was when Henry Whitmore, the hotel's owner, strode toward her with a warm smile. Vanessa, he said, extending a hand. Right on time. Daniel's breath hitched. She shook Whitmore's hand firmly, flashing a small, knowing smile. Likewise, she said smoothly. And then Whitmore spoke the words that shattered everything. I knew hiring you was the right decision. Hiring, not a guest, not just anyone. She was his lawyer. By the end of that breakfast, Daniel was no longer employed. As Vanessa stepped out of the hotel, the crisp morning air filled her lungs. She had faced moments like this countless times. But today, she didn't just prove a point. She changed the game. Daniel had learned that assumptions carry consequences. And Vanessa? She walked away, not just victorious, but as a reminder that sometimes, the most powerful response isn't a fight, that it's simply standing your ground and letting the truth unravel on its own.